Okay, so next I would like to introduce how to draw the histogram diagram for our continued variables. So for the individual label for each category, we use the bar chart. But for the continued variables, especially for numerical columns, so we use HIST, which called histogram 直方图 for to look at the distribution for each variables. Okay, so let us to look at the information again, our data frame information again. So here you can check the data type with INT 4064. So it is a numerical data type. So all the data type are integers. So how many variables? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 variables are continued variables. Okay, so we choose some continued labels for our analyze target. So we use an NUM columns which list the variable name for continued variables: balance, day, duration, campaign, D, pay, P days, conversions. All students, you should know all the meanings for each columns because we have explained these variables before. Okay, so we first to assign the continued variables name as NUM columns for our list. Okay, so we also to draw the subplot for our continued variables, but we only use 2 multiple 3 subplots, which is 6 subplot for these 6 variables, continued variables. Okay, so we use this one, histogram, for our diagram. This one, histogram, because the histogram is only single variables. So you only use a single value for the data distributions. So here we use the for function again. So we retrieve the column name, especially for numerical column name in our NUM columns list. So we retrieve balance in the beginning and then date and duration all the way to conversion. These 6 variables, retrieve each one by each one. Okay, so with this diagram you may have the diagram for these 4 subsets for balance. So you can see the balance distribution for our diagram, for our DF or our data frame. So most the data are near is close to 0. Later I will explain what is this distribution mean. So you have to have some format for the balance. The day for each one, duration is the same, so it's almost to left hand side. Campaign, P day, and conversion. For conversion only 0 and 1, so it's exactly easy to understand. Okay, so you can use all the continued variable as our NUM columns too. So I add more 2 variables as our numerical columns name. Okay, so because right now we have 8 subplot, so I use 3 by 3, 3 multiple 3, which 9 subplot for these 8 for these 8 variables. Okay, so you can see there are 8 histogram for each continuous variables. Okay, here is a homework, so you have to check with one continuous variables to draw a histogram chart. Here is an example for the histogram. So with this diagram, we have this one. Okay, so we have a data like this way, 3, 4, 2, 3, all the way to 5, 4. And we have to count each frequency for for each value, which is 1, 2, 3, all the way to night. So we draw the diagram, this one, histogram, H-I-S-T, it means histogram. The label is value for X. For the Y-X label is frequency. And the title we name histogram. The data, so it's a vector, 一个向量, a vector. So you know the distribution for this series numbers. Okay, so we have to draw the histogram for balance. So you can see the distribution for balance, but it's unbalanced, 不平衡的. It's left to the right, to the left. So we have to use a beam. So how many bars for our histogram? So we use 50. So you may see more bars for our histogram. So you can use, maybe you can rename the bits with 100. So you may see more bar in our histogram. Okay, so you can change the parameter for each variables. Okay, so we use the campaign, another continuous variables, the distribution for campaign. Okay, here is our homework, maybe let us homework, let me see, homework 1, 2, homework 3. Here is homework 3, to draw the histogram chart for continuous variables. Okay, so we also can use describe to see the distribution for each variables, especially for continuous variables. Okay, so you get each continuous variables, the count, 有多少笔资料, how many records for each variables, and the mean, the average for the P day, the average for conversions, for campaign, standard deviation, the minimum value, the maximum value, the median, 中位数, okay, 1 quarter, 3rd quarter. Also, you can to see all the continuous variables described for each continuous variables. Okay, so it's time for us to analyze the response column, which is the term deposit. to analyze each variable response with our term deposit. Okay, so with the value count, so you can see the labels for each category, for each labels. So here we use we retrieve the data file, the DF dataset with the Y column, this one, and we to count each label for each Y. So here, so you may get the result we call value count. So you may see, you may take a look at what is the value count, the content for. So here it calculates the summation for each Y type. So how many records is in no status, how many for yes status. So it means there are only 5,000 clients the status is yes, rest are not. Okay, so with the value count, so you may draw the diagram bar for this data. So we draw the bar chart for this yellow, no or yes for this one. So it's easy for you guys to draw the diagram for each variables, especially for your labels. 它们的类别. Okay, yes, no. So you can see with this diagram, so most the majority part are no. Okay, so let us to find out the response Y with other category variables like job and response. So what is the job between the job with the response Y? So we create a JDF. So create an empty data frame. This one. You may say here is an empty data frame without anything in the data frame because it is an empty. Okay, so we to retrieve the data set in Y column which is yes statements, and to calculate the value for the job. So it means the job labels with yes. So there's a two criteria. Is yes, and in the yes in Y variable, and the labels in job. So you can have the diagram this one. And we assign to the JDF yes. So you can see here we create a new columns here. So it used to be empty, right? After we doing the function, this one, so we calculate each labels for the job title. Okay, so we also can to retrieve the data frame column Y with no and calculate the labels for each job status. Okay, so we name it no. Okay, so let us look at the JDF again. So you know the distribution for two for the response Y, yes and no. Okay, it's time for us to draw the bar chart for this diagram. So here is show the diagram with different levels of job, right? Like this one. Here, this one is a management status, technician, okay, 工程师, okay, blue collar, okay, administrator, retire. So you can see the difference between the response Y. Okay, so also you can see the result as these two instructions. So you have to know how to retrieve each levels with the different response time. Y, yes and no. Okay? You can do the same process as the marital status with response Y. So we create a new data frame we call MDF, empty data frame. So you can see here NDF with 0 and 0 with nothing in this data frame. Also, we do it the same process. So we create the yes statements for marital status. We also create no status for marital status and assign to MDF data frame. Here you may find the data frame MDF, so you know the two labels for response, yes response and no response for each labels of marital status, married, single, divorced. So you know the proportion for each part. Okay, it's time for us to draw the diagram for marital. Okay, so you can see the diagram for each one to show the result for the MDF, right? It's so easy. Here is the same situation, but we replace the marital with education. So you can see the different labels with the Y response. Okay, so we do. So you may find the education and response, the distribution for each labels. So you may see the result, this one, okay? The education level, secondary, okay? Primary, theory, unknown, okay? 4 types of education. Okay, it's the same process, so we can see the type of contact with response. Also, we use the bar chart. Okay, so we have talking about the diagram for each vector and the relationship between two labels, two categories, two variables. So you have to make some conclusions. Okay, so according to the diagram, we can tell the occurrence to our data set. Okay, so you may find some conclusion for the diagram. So it means with the blue color and the surface job title is less likely to subscribe for term deposit. 蓝领阶级跟服务的工作者呢，不太会订阅我们的 term deposit 这个定期存款。What about the marital status? So the married customers are less likely to subscribe for term deposit. OK， 已婚的人，他可能经济压力，他就不会再去购买这个 term deposit. OK, so for the contact level, so you may see with the serial phone type contact are less likely to subscribe for the term deposit. So with each diagram, you have to describe the meaning for each diagram. That's the purpose for data scientific. 这样科学家就有像这样子的能力 ，OK？ Okay, so let's find some numerical column to deposit describe. So we have, okay. So here is the balance with y, the balance with y. Yes, the balance. So we can do the same thing. Okay, the balance yes, balance no. Okay, for the describe. Also, you can draw the diagram for each. This one. So you can see with the count dropped. We drop. We don't use this. We don't use this 4 column. We only use the mean, standard deviation, minima, and the maxima as the bound criteria. Also, you can use with the age and deposit. Age, okay. Okay, so you can have the same process with different variables. Okay, so you can see the age and the deposit status. Okay, that's deposit, it means response, yes and no, the status. Okay, so you have to practice all the rest of the source codes. Okay. Okay, so next section, I'm going to do the data cleaning process for your guys. Okay, see you next section.